At 72, most people expect peace. Quiet mornings. Familiar routines. A life gently slowing down. I thought that's what I had earned. Instead, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, smiling as I signed away my entire life. "Please don't do this," my attorney whispered. His voice cracked with panic. "You're giving him everything." I nodded and kept signing. My husband, 45 years of marriage, sat across the table, perfectly calm. Richard didn't even try to hide his satisfaction. To him, this divorce was already over. House in his name. Business in his name. Money in his accounts. And me. I looked like a foolish old woman surrendering without a fight. What no one in that room understood was this. I had already won. 4 decades, Richard and I built our life from nothing. A modest home in Connecticut. 2 children. A small auto parts business that grew from a dusty garage into something worth millions. I worked beside him every day, books, customers, suppliers, until he told me I didn't need to anymore. Then the changes began. Late nights. Expensive dinners I never attended. A phone that never left his pocket. The scent of perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked questions, he laughed them off. "You're imagining things," he said. At our age. I wanted to believe him. I really did. Until I found the card. It was tucked inside his coat pocket. "To my darling Richard. Thank you for making me feel alive again. Love always, C." That night, I placed it on the table between us. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. "I want a divorce," he said flatly. "My lawyer will contact you." 3 weeks later, his offer arrived, $50,000 and the furniture. That's when my lawyer told me the truth. Fighting would take years. The business and house were legally his. Proving my contribution would be difficult. Expensive. Risky. "So what do you want to do?" he asked gently. I picked up the pen. "I'll sign." Shock filled the room. His lawyer smiled. Richard thought he'd crushed me. What they didn't see, what they couldn't imagine, was the filing cabinet waiting in my small apartment. And the evidence it held. Rehook. They thought I had surrendered. But that night, alone in my apartment, I opened one drawer and everything changed. That first night alone, fear tried to swallow me whole. I had no house. No income. No security. Just a 1-bedroom apartment with thin walls and a parking lot view. I sat at the tiny table, hands shaking around a mug of tea, asking myself one question. What do I still have? The answer came slowly. Records. Richard used to tease me about my habit. You could find a receipt from the 80s if you wanted, he'd laugh. He wasn't wrong. I pulled out the filing cabinet, one of the few things I'd taken when I left. Folder after folder. Decades of paperwork. Receipts. Bank statements. Letters. Contracts. Hour by hour, the panic faded. Because the truth was still there. Old business letters addressed to Richard and Margaret Morgan. Insurance forms listing me as co-owner. Tax returns showing shared income. Proposals signed by both of us. Then I found it. The original registration document. R&M Morgan Auto Parts. Owners, Richard Morgan and Margaret Morgan. My name was there. Clear as day. He had removed me years later, but the beginning told a different story. By dawn, my hands were steady again. I didn't call my original lawyer. He had seen me surrender. I needed someone who didn't know that part of the story. I made one phone call. "I have proof of joint ownership of a multi-million-dollar business," I said calmly. "And the divorce papers haven't been filed yet." There was a pause. "Can you be here this afternoon?" Thomas Brennan didn't smile often. But when he reviewed my documents, something sharp lit up in his eyes. "You didn't lose," he said. "You set a trap." He explained it carefully. I had signed under pressure. Without full disclosure. And most importantly, nothing was finalized. "We don't defend," he said. "We attack." For the first time in weeks, hope returned. Rehook. By the next morning, my husband's lawyer was furious and my phone was about to ring. Part 3, when the mask finally cracked. 2 days later, the call came. "Richard. We need to talk," he said, voice tight. I almost laughed. He had already heard. About the new lawyer. About the challenge. About the forensic accounting request. "You're making a mistake," he warned. "At your age, do you really want a court battle?" "I want what's mine," I replied. Silence. Then I mentioned the apartment he was secretly paying for. With business funds. Another silence, longer this time. Within weeks, the truth spilled out. The accountant's report was devastating. Hundreds of thousands diverted. Assets undervalued. Lies documented line by line. Richard panicked. Threatening messages appeared. Anonymous texts. Letters slipped under my door. "You're old. You weren't enough. Drop the case." Then she showed up. Cynthia. Young. Polished. Furious. She accused me of ruining his life. Of being cruel. Of refusing to let him be happy. I listened. Calmly. Then I told her the truth. He didn't leave honestly. He didn't divide fairly. He stole. She left shaken. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in months. 3 days later, Richard asked to meet, no lawyers. I said no. He tried again. Bigger offers. Emotional appeals. Guilt. Then, when none of it worked, he came to my apartment with her. That's when the mask fell. He called me boring. Replaceable. Useless. Told me I never mattered. And that's when I knew, without doubt, I would never settle. Rehook. If he thought intimidation would break me, he was about to learn how wrong he was, because the trial was about to begin. Part 4. The courtroom where truth spoke louder. The courtroom was silent as evidence filled the air. Former employees testified. Documents spoke. Numbers didn't lie. The judge listened. Richard stumbled. His affair wasn't hidden anymore. The stolen money was undeniable. The lies collapsed under their own weight. Even Cynthia's testimony unraveled him. Text messages. Bank transfers. Jokes about spending business money. The judge's expression hardened with every detail. When Richard took the stand, his confidence was gone. Each question stripped another layer away until all that remained was a man exposed. Then the ruling came. The business. Marital property. The house. Mine. The stolen money. Repaid. Legal fees. His responsibility. And more. An audit. Consequences. Accountability. I didn't feel joy. I felt closure. Rehook. But the story didn't end in the courtroom, because what happened after the verdict shocked everyone. Part 5. What winning really looks like. Within weeks, the business partners contacted my lawyer. They wanted me out. Not because I was weak, but because Richard had become a liability. They offered more than my share's value. Cash. Immediate. I accepted. Richard lost control of everything he tried to steal. As for me, I bought a new home. Quiet. Comfortable. Mine. At 72, I didn't start over. I finally stood free. Final rehook for series end. They thought age made me powerless. They were wrong. Sometimes, patience is the sharpest weapon of all.